Learning objectives. At the end of this topic, you will be able to understand the need for separation of substances in a mixture. Explain the different methods of separation adopted in agriculture like handpicking, threshing, winnowing and sieving. Explain the methods of separation of solids from liquids like sedimentation and decantation, filtration, evaporation and condensation. Introduction. What is a mixture? A mixture is a combination of different things in which the ingredient elements are individually separate. Are you aware of making an orange squash? So what exactly is orange squash made of? It is quite simple. Orange juice is prepared by mixing the orange extract along with water and sugar. It is a desirable mixture without any impurities present in them. But will you drink water with dirt particles floating in it? Or will you eat the grains along with the stones present in them? Generally, substances are not found in pure form. Impurities can be added by chance or for a purpose. Hence, it is necessary to remove the unwanted impurities from the mixtures. Need for separation. Before the usage of any mixtures or substances, it is necessary to check for the separation of any unwanted substance in them. As in the case of rice, stones are removed before cooking. Sometimes even useful substances are separated, such that the individual ingredients of the mixtures are used beneficially. For example, curd is churned to obtain butter so that both the products are used in a beneficial way. The separation of substances are not done using a common method. The methods of separation may vary depending on the state, size, and type of material used. The different methods of separation include handpicking, threshing, winnowing, sieving, sedimentation and decantation, filtration, evaporation, condensation. Handpicking. The handpicking method is used to separate large-sized impurities like stone from grains and rice. Since the quantity of those impurities are not very large, handpicking is found to be the most convenient method, but it requires more time. Threshing. Once the harvesting of wheat and paddy is complete, the stalks are tied and dried under sun before the grains are separated. Is it possible to pluck the grains from the stalks as we pluck mangoes and guavas from the trees? Not at all. So, we use a method called threshing to perform the separation. In threshing, stalks are beaten on the rocks to free the grains. Threshing can also be done using bullocks and machines. Winnowing. Winnowing is used to separate heavier and lighter particles of a mixture by blowing air or wind. Farmers use this method to remove heavier particles like grains from the husk. The husk particles are carried away by wind, leaving behind the heavier grains. The removed husk particles are used as fodder for the cattle. Sieving. Sieving is the method used to separate components of a mixture present in different sizes. For example, sieves are used to separate the impurities from flour. The fine flour particles pass through the holes of the sieve and bigger impurities remain in the sieve. Similarly, in the case of construction sites, sand or oil are sieved to separate stones and pebbles from them. Sedimentation, decantation and filtration. Sedimentation. Sedimentation is the process of adding mixture to the water, where heavier components settle down in water and lighter particles float in it. For example, before cooking the rice or grains, water is added to it. The rice particles settle down in the water and impurities float in the water. Decantation. The process of removing the top layer of water after sedimentation is referred to as decantation. For example, the mixture of oil and water can be separated by decantation. Whenever oil is poured in water, the oil forms a separate layer on the top of the water. The top layer of oil is separated by pouring it carefully to another glass. Filtration. Filtration is the process of obtaining pure liquid without any solid particles, and this is done with the help of a strainer. For example, in order to remove the tea particles from the mixture of tea and milk, we pour it through the strainer. We find the tea particles remaining in the strainer, leaving behind the pure liquid. Now let us use the process of sedimentation, decantation, and filtration in the process of muddy water purification. Take some muddy water in a beaker. It's just a mixture of mud and water. Stir the mixture well and leave it for half an hour. The mud settles down at the bottom of the beaker by the process of sedimentation. Now, transfer the water that is settled at the top of the sedimentation by tilting the beaker to another empty beaker. The water thus obtained is called a decantate. As a next step, pour the decantate through a tea strainer, hence this is referred to as filtering. It is not possible to obtain the clear water after straining the decantate through the strainer. Hence, water obtained is filtered using a fine cloth. Only some mud is deposited in the cloth, still the water obtained is not clean and has dirt in it. So, a filter paper is used that separates the fine particles from the muddy water. A filter paper has finer holes than cloth, and hence it is used for further filtration. Place the filter paper over funnel and pour the dirty water through the filter paper. Look at the filter paper after filtration. You can see that the finer particles of mud are deposited in the filter paper. Hence, the filtrate obtained is free from impurity. Evaporation and Condensation. Evaporation. Evaporation is the process of converting water to its vapor form. For example, take a beaker filled with water and heat it. You will find that water will disappear completely in the form of steam. The process of evaporation is used to separate certain soluble impurities from the liquid. Let us take a beaker filled with salt solution, which is obtained by dissolving common salt in water. The salt solution is heated and allowed to boil. We find water getting evaporated, leaving behind the salt. Do you know how we get common salt from the sea? In general, seawater has many salts mixed in it, among which common salt is obtained by allowing the seawater to stand in small, shallow pits. By the process of evaporation, the water gets completely evaporated, leaving behind the salt. The salt thus obtained is sent for further purification. Multiple separation methods. Let us do an experiment to undergo multiple separation methods. Let us try to separate a mixture of salt, sand and water. To achieve this, we go for multiple separation methods. As a first step, add the mixture to a beaker that contains water. Stir it and leave it aside for some time. You will observe the sand particles settle down in the water and it dissolves the salt. Now, the clear liquid above the sediment is poured out to another beaker by using the process of decantation. Using the process of sedimentation and decantation, we have separated the sand from salt. Still, the salt that is separated is not in solid form but dissolved in water. In order to recover the water and salt in its purest form, we go for the condensation method. For this, the decanted liquid is taken in a kettle and heated. When the steam comes out, a metallic plate with ice is held at the spout of the kettle. As the steam comes in contact with a metal plate cooled with ice, it condenses and forms water in the liquid form. The water drop that is observed falling from the plate is due to the condensation of steam. The process of conversion of water vapor into its liquid form is referred to as condensation. Saturation. Can water dissolve any amount of substance? We have seen that many substances like salt, sugar, etc. dissolve in water. But only a fixed quantity of sugar or salt can be dissolved for a particular amount of water. Let us demonstrate saturation with the help of an experiment. Take a vessel filled with water at room temperature. Add certain amount of sugar to it, you will find that the sugar gets dissolved in water. Let us try adding more sugar to the water. You will find that only certain amount of sugar gets dissolved in water and the remaining crystals deposit at the bottom of the vessel. We refer to this condition as saturated condition. So how do we overcome the problem of saturation? In order to dissolve the sugar beyond the saturated condition, we can use any of the two methods. 1. By increasing the amount of water to dissolve the sugar. Or 2. By heating the water, the increased amount of sugar can be dissolved in it. On cooling the solution again, we find the sugar crystals deposited at the bottom of the vessel. Does all the liquids have the same saturation level? No. Different substances have different saturation levels. For example, sugar and salt have different saturation levels when dissolved in water. The amount of sugar dissolved in water is much higher than that of salt. Summary. Let's summarize the topic. A mixture is a combination of different things in which the ingredient elements are individually separate. The hand-picking method is used to separate large-sized impurities like stone from grains and rice. In threshing, stalks are beaten on the rocks to free the grains. Winnowing is used to separate heavier and lighter particles of a mixture by blowing air or wind. Sieving is the method used to separate components of a mixture present in different sizes. Sedimentation is the process of adding mixture to the water where heavier components are used to settle down in the water and lighter particles float in it. The process of removing the top layer of water after sedimentation is referred to as decantation. Filtration is the process of obtaining pure liquid without any solid particles, and this is done with the help of a strainer. Evaporation is a process of converting water to its vapor form. The process of conversion of water vapor into its liquid form is referred to as condensation.